Hello and welcome to Gravitas Wins Conversations. Only way to build long-term wealth is to own companies. For most of us, that means investing in good quality companies. To identify good quality stocks, we need to measure management performance. That is reflected in annual reports. Rahul Chauhan, today's guest, is both an operator, he owns a company, and a successful investor. So he has seen both sides of the table, so to speak. Today, we are going to discuss how to read annual reports and what are the signals we can pick from that. Hope you enjoy the conversations. Hello, Rahul. Welcome to the conversations. Let's start with your investing journey, Rahul. How did you start with this and what's your style of investing?
Okay, so Joseph, first of all, I'll let you know how my journey started. I remember one incident where I asked my father, "Dad, what is this stock market?" Because he loved to watch news. So, and no one in our family ever invested in stock markets besides me till date, right? So he told me, Rahul, if it's I don't know much about the stock markets, but I know just one thing: if the market is going up, it's good for India, and if it's not,
Mhm.
then it's not so good for India. That's the only thing I remember, right? Fast forward to my MBA days. I did my MBA from ICFI Business School in Bangalore, and luckily for me, everywhere, be it hostel, be it college, there were only business news channels which were, playing on all the TV screens. So that's how my interest started rising again. And one fine day, I spoke to my roommate who was also a good investor at his point of time, right? So he explained that you can start with any amount of money, and that's where I told him I have got 500 bucks with me. Can we start with that? He said yes, but you need to have a demat account. So when I tried to understand the complete process for a demat account, I found it painful. Right at that moment, I'm talking about almost
Mhm.
15, 16 years back. So he told me, I'll do one thing. You give me 500 bucks, I'll buy it on your behalf, and you tell me which are the names you want to buy. So I gave him 500 rupees. I gave him two company names, and I remember those company names because you know when it's like your first love. You never forget those
Yes.
names, correct? So the first company was SpiceJet,
Mhm.
and because I had a fascination towards aviation industry, and the second company is I remember is Arvind Mills,
Mm.
right? So these were the two company which he bought on my behalf. I gave him 500 and I told him that you need to divide 250 rupees in both of them, right? And one and a half years later, when we completed our MBA, he came back and gave me 500 rupees and said, Rahul, one company went down, another one went up. So total money is actually 500 only. I said, okay, it's fine, right? But that's how the whole story, ignited in me, and that's where the whole story built up.
Mm.
Luckily for me, again, I had been quite lucky on multiple aspects, Joseph. Uh, 2008-9 crash was very early in my life. People have
Mm.
seen stock market crash only in 2020 in recent time, right? I've seen in my very early days, which was 2008, 2009. Right? I learned a lot of things there again. And that's where, from being a novice investor, I started to learn more about it. And that's how I became a long term fundamental based investor where I look for great companies, I look for great managements, I look for their business models, their cash flows. I buy them at fair prices, and then I hold them out. I can still hold company. I'm still holding a company which is almost 10 for the last 10 years in my portfolio. I'm still willing to give another 10 years if it keeps on performing.
Wonderful. Good journey and almost similar. It's just that I started investing on my own rather than my friends. But uh, as you said, first I also invested in two companies. One went up, one went down, and in the panic I sold the other one. And
Okay.
that's how you learn. I mean, that's how you learn. So which is good, Rahul. Now
Absolutely.
let's talk about this, annual reports and financial statements. What's the significance of annual reports, especially from a fundamental analysis?
Mhm.
What's the significance of annual reports?
So it's like a watching a movie. So if I
Hmm.
may ask, which is your favorite Hindi or Indian movie?
I am very old school. I only know about Tamil movies. I don't know
Okay.
about Bollywood movies.
Okay.
Uh, like some any of the Kamala Hassan movies would be my favorite movies.
So if you see in the end, there has to be a story which gets played out, right?
Mm, mm,
So annual report is that end of the story. If you
mm,
have selected a particular company, you have done your initial research. Now you want to understand the whole story, and the story comes
mm.
to an end only with the annual report. So that's why annual reports become very important in your investing journey.
Wonderful. Uh, should I be a CA to understand annual reports?
No, not at all, Joseph. I myself, I did my hotel management, and then I did my MBA, that too in sales and marketing. And you don't have to be a finance guy or an accounting guy or a CA just to understand annual reports. Not at all.
Oh, okay. Uh, yes. Like I mean, initially my inhibition was I don't know anything about finance, and but I once I started reading annual reports. Oh, okay, maybe I can understand. But I still had even now I have this. If only I understand financial statement. If only I'm a CA. If only I have known finance a little more, MBA finance or any other finance, maybe I would do more. So, what are the key elements you look when you are reading through the annual reports?
Okay. The fun part about annual reports, Joseph, is they run into multiple hundred pages, right?
Yeah.
So if you go ahead and check an annual report from Indian Energy Exchange (IEX), right, it runs up more than 300 pages. Same story with
Mm.
Indus Towers, right? So we need to really understand what are the things and what are the key elements which we need to look into a particular annual report. So there are a few things which I have noted down, right? Which I always look whenever I have to go ahead and invest and look into a particular company. The first thing would be director's report. It's very critical, right? What are the MD saying? What is the CEO saying about the company and the business, right? Then I always look into management discussion and analysis. Then I go down and so it comes with a complete
Sequence.
sequence itself. Yes, absolutely. Then I always look at the management salary. Are they within the limits? And is the management spending its money on CSR? It is very important aspect. So these are the five very important things. Numbers are always there. You can look into numbers at various places. But these key elements, which are like more fundamental, you'll get very good insights from there. So these are the five important things which I always look.
So, Rahul, is it possible to find hidden cockroaches from reading through the annual reports?
Oh, absolutely yes, Joseph. I mean, annual report is something which will give you all the insights which you are looking forward for. Just to give you an example, right? If you go ahead and just look into management discussion and analysis or director's report, right? If the company size is just 100, 200, 500 crores in terms of market capitalization, and these guys are talking about world economy and what's happening outside in the world. I mean, those guys should be focused on their business, on the industry itself. You don't have to talk about anything else, which indirectly means you're trying to point fingers if things are not in your in the right direction in your business to circumstances which are outside your control, right? So that's not fair. Similarly, if you just go ahead and check the management salary, right, the statutory limit says that it has to be within 5% of the net profit, right? But if it crossing year after year, what is the reason that those guys are taking salary much more than what is the limit set by the government, right? Similarly, I also check what is the CSR spend. Now, the government has said that within the next 3 years, you have to spend 2% of your net profits. And they've given a good 3 year timeline. And if a business is not even able to do that, you're not able to find a good NGO where you can spend this kind of money, you can actually go ahead and send it to Prime Minister Relief Fund. That's quite
Hmm.
easy, right? And
Hmm.
if you're not doing that, what is the reason behind it? So if these are the very smaller things, if you just have a look into it, you'll get an idea that there how many cockroaches are there. And as Warren Buffett says, there is never one cockroach in the closet. There would be
Correct.
multiple of them. I'll give you just one another insight. You
Hmm.
go also go ahead and check what kind of there are certain companies which would have subsidiaries and they will give more business to the subsidiary. right? Why
Mm.
is it happening? Why the business is not going into the company which is actually listed, right? Then you'll also see there are many management MDOs, the CEO, who are sitting in remuneration committee.
Yeah.
Why is it so? That it ideally, so it's an ideal situation. Ideally, independent directors need to lead those committees. But if the MD or the CEO is already sitting there, it's not a good sign. So these are the
Mm.
few things which from where you'll get to know easily if there are some cockroaches within the closet or not.
Okay. Very valuable insights, Rahul. Now let's flip this.
Yeah.
So yes, these are the cockroaches, but can I also find about the future possibilities and what the company is going to be in the future by reading through the annual reports?
Yes, and for that you have to go into the past because history always talks about future, right? So if
Mm.
you go ahead and check their 2, 3, 5 years annual reports, there has to be a story which gets built up. For example, let's say a company has announced that they would be doing some capital expansion and they'll be putting up some money, and they have earmarked a certain amount, let's say 200 crores, and it has they announced it in let's say year 2018-19, right?
Mm.
Now you need to check in 1920 how much money was spent, and if the company said and the management said they will able to build it up and running in next 3 years, is it happening or not?
Mm.
So if it's happening, if it's not happening, why it has not happened? Are these guys blaming to external circumstances, and are those circumstances even valid or not?
Mm.
Right, so even if you look at last 2, 3 years annual reports and just look at these kind of summaries, you don't have to read each and every
It-
page. You get a very fair idea. So even if you look at those annual reports and then you read the current annual report, you'll get a fair story building up. If the story stays there, it's perfect. If it's not, then you know that you need to move on.
Good, good, good. So, so one of the question that I had was also, should we limit reading to the current annual report, or should we look at the previous ones also? You have kind of answered it. That's a very good phrase. History always informs the future. I'm going to use that. I'm going to borrow that and use it. So it's very good. Now, is it like, do you look at 2 3 years, or even you look at a very long, say for example, 10-year kind of a track record?
All the big investors, all the experienced investors always say that you need to look at least 10 years, right? But honestly and ideally we don't do that. I don't do that
Mm,
myself,
mm, mm.
and I'm admitting on an open platform, I don't do that myself. I usually look into just current year's annual reports. I get a fair idea about about it.
Mm.
I mean, 80% information I get from same
The
year's
current
annual
one.
report, right? If there is something interesting which is happening, then I'll definitely go ahead and check previous year's annual reports. So if you can check up to 3 years, it's better. If you can get up to 5 years, perfect. You'll get
Mm.
everything which you want to know about that particular business.
Wonderful. And
Yeah.
also, if you are a fundamental investor, you will be tracking a company for a quite a long time. You would have invested, and you would know the story in a long term. And as you
Yes.
rightly said, some companies you are holding it for a very long time. Every year you have read that year's report alone. Over a long time, you would be able to find that particular story that is forming, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's true. Now, yeah, you want to add anything, Rahul?
Yeah, it's like it when there are movies which come, you'll see certain movies which will have part one, part two,
Yeah.
part three. Right? If those stories is not getting connected, what's the use of
Mm,
that particular piece? For example, if you have seen Bahubali 2 and you have not seen
mm,
Bahubali 1, you'll not enjoy it more. Similarly with
mm,
Drishyam, same
mm,
story gets built up even with your annual reports.
mm. Very good, very good. So, I think it was Peter Lynch who said, if you want to be a good investor, you need to have a multidisciplinary thinking, and that is what you are exhibiting. Like, in hotel management, and then there are movies, and you are bringing all your passions together, uh, which is what it has to be. Rahul, I'm going to the financial statements and financial numbers. Do we have to read and calculate by ourselves, or do we have to do that by ourselves, or can we rely on portals like Screener and Money Control? uh, can we depend on them?
You can always depend on platforms like Skinner and Money Control and various others, because usually all these platforms takes numbers from BSc website directly. So I
Mm,
can vouch for Skinner for sure. And in fact, I've
mm,
met both the founders of that particular platform myself. So, and I've seen their numbers are mostly 99% right. The 1% gap can come up from certain, technical glitch coming in
mm.
between, right? And even if you want to re-verify at any point of time, you can actually look in the annual reports. It would say the right numbers, right? So it's always better to have a recheck, but every number, every other ratio would be there on these kind of platforms. Those are usually on the right direction.
Wonderful. Yeah, Screener has become a pillar in that particular investing circle and investing analysis and journey as well. Okay, so I'm reading through it. You have talked about some of the cockroaches, signals, and the
Mhm,
future and
mhm,
everything.
mhm.
How can I improve my skills in understanding annual reports?
Just start enjoying your annual reports. When I started my
Hmm.
own journey, okay, let me go back to my college days. I
Hmm.
was a very poor reader myself.
Hmm.
I never read any books in my school days.
Hard to believe.
I never read any book even in my graduation days during my hotel management. And even till first year of my MBA, I never read. I used to simply say, and I'll quote it in Hindi. अगर मुझे इतना पढ़ना है, I would actually go ahead and read my school and college books than reading these kind of fictions, right? So that was my thought process. But one day I read one book by Warren Buffett by chance. The book was on Warren Buffett, right? And that changed the whole concept for
Mm,
me. And this is where the whole thing started. And
mm,
then when I started looking at annual reports, initially it is very difficult, Joseph. You know, those boring words, those boring paragraphs which you don't understand, financial jargons, everything, right? But that's how you start improving day by day. So these five things which I mentioned, right, it came up with certain understanding that I don't have to look everything into the annual reports. I don't have to
mm,
read each page, each word of that 300 page annual report. I just need to identify few five things which I can understand, and I can just focus on those, right?
mm,
So once you start reading an annual report, you just need to see first what are you are interested in. Are you interested
mm,
in numbers? If not, perfect. Because numbers you can analyze from Skinner or money control, right? You just need to have the story coming in. Where is the
mm.
story lying? The story lies in management discussion and analysis. The story lies on the spend of CSR spend or the salaries which these guys are taking. These few points or these few pages will give you a good insight. Rest is
Wonderful.
up to you. If you can understand, then it's perfect.
Like, as you rightly said, Rahul, when you start you don't know anything and then you slowly build up. Now what's your routine look like? How long, how much time you spend, how much time you dedicate for reading through this analysis, how much time you dedicate to your own analysis after you have read? And I'm sure you are also comparing with other companies also. It's not just one company's AR that you read, but you also read other companies in that particular industry or the vertical, and then you kind of compare. How long, how much time do you dedicate? What's your routine look like in this?
So there is no time limit for me to when I go ahead and read any particular company, right? There have been instances that I have taken good 6 months and I have not invested in that particular company, and there have been instances that I've just spent 1 week and I'm totally comfortable. When you have invested almost 16, 17,
Mm,
18 years, it comes from for me at this stage, it comes as a compounding effect even in my knowledge. What are
true.
the things I need to look at? What are the dots which need to connect it, right? But ideally I would say that you should actually spend around 1.5 months on a particular company, because that's when you get to know fair idea. You'll have a fair idea whether the business is going in the right direction. What are the people talking about it? What are the analyst reports saying? What are the other investors talking about it? And then you can take a decision whether you want to go with those investors, or you want to take your independent decision.
Lovely. So you talked about not just the annual reports, but you also talked about what others investors talk about and everything. So in addition to reading through the annual reports, what complements studying this annual report? What other things that I can do to understand the company?
So I'll just take you through how I go ahead and look into a particular company from
Yes.
stage one, right? So let's say I'll taking one example, and this is just as an example, right?
Hmm.
So I was recently studying Divi's Lab, and because I'm not a SEBI registered analyst or investor, let me be very clear. Any name of the company I'm talking about it just as an example. These
Yeah.
are no recommendations to buy, sell, or hold or anything, right? So I was looking to Divi's Lab. I usually stay away from pharma industry, but this is one company which caught my attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I looked at the numbers on screener, it looked very interesting to me. Then go ahead and check their past performance in their profit and loss statements. I found
Hmm.
those numbers again interesting. Then comes the ratios, which are good. Then I go ahead and went their cash flows, which are again fantastic. Then I went ahead and checked their investors and in, what kind of investors are who have invested in this particular company. Then I go ahead and check all the details on annual report. So that becomes my second stage of my research,
Mm.
right? When I'm comfortable with the annual report, then comes the last part of it. From screener to annual reports, from annual reports, there is another platform which I use, which is Value Picker Forum. Now,
Mm.
this forum is of like-minded investors where you can ask questions, you can reply, and you can share your own insights also, right? So I always check a company's, what other investors, like-minded investors, are talking about that particular company. I go and read at least for 6 to 8 months or up to an year what other investors are saying about it, and that's where my mind starts to connect the dot whether I should go ahead and then go for the valuation part, or I just stop it here itself.
Wonderful.
Because at
I
times
know.
there will be certain scenarios which you have missed from your own research, but
Yeah.
other investors
Yes.
give it their own perspective also.
And you can be blindsided by your own biases as well, either enthusiasm or the otherwise also.
Absolutely. I mean, you have spent almost 6 months on a particular company, and then you have to decide that you're not going to invest. It's difficult because you have invested your money, your time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And you touched upon valuation. I know we are only talking about annual reports. I want to touch upon that valuation also. So this all the process that you talked about, going through the numbers and reading through the annual reports, going through the value picker forum, all of that reveals whether this particular company is a good company that I
Yes.
want to invest and whether I want to hold and so on and so forth. What indicates to you that this is the price I want to buy? So what's that valuation again? I mean, it's again probably we should have a separate discussion for that. But if you can touch upon shortly and give us a summary of that.
Sure. Okay. For me, it's quite easy, and there is one specific reason behind it. Valuation is just a guidance for me. It's never a
Hmm.
final answer, because it's like an Excel file. Whatever number I key in, I get the output out of it, right? Similarly, when I look at valuation, I just look at whether the price to earning ratios are in control. I mean, it's not very high, going up to 60 or 100 or those kind of numbers. And if those things are sitting at that high level, what is the reason behind it?
Mm.
Why the PE is so high? And is the industry PE high or low? So there comes the
Mm.
comparison also.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
always go ahead and check their one very important thing, which comes from their cash flow to net profits comparison. So I
Hmm.
always check cash flow from operations to their net profits, and then the final numbers which comes for me would be, is the company actually below 200 DMA of their price? So this is one
Okay.
technical aspect which I check, but there's a
True.
one thing which I'll definitely look into it
Before buying it.
before
Yeah.
I go ahead and buy. Even after that, it's not necessary that I'll buy at that particular price. I'll sit on it. I'll
Mm.
have my own decision. But usually, why it's easy for me, Joseph, because I usually look into companies which are already sitting at 52-week low, which is almost 1 year low, right? And if the business is like 3 year low, for example, Hero Honda, currently, if you check it, it's almost around 3 to 5 year low. Why? You know? So if you're already looking at a company which is sitting at a
Mm.
low valuation, you
Mm.
don't have to
Mm.
look at the valuation per se. You look on the
Mm.
business fundamentals, you look futuristic growth. Why Hero Honda, for example, is sitting at a 5 year low? Is the future
Mm.
bright? If it's yes, then go ahead and buy it. It's a no-brainer at all. Then
Wonderful.
you don't have to look into any Excel file or do any valuation. It
Very
becomes
true. Very
easy.
true. Yeah, Phil Town, he also talks about combining both the fundamental analysis, like in the process that you explained, but also finally the technical analysis to arrive at what price that we need to buy. So your process seems like a merger of these two things. Now, okay, so let's say, for example, I have done all of this analysis and I've started buying. I know that this is the price I need to buy and I've started buying it.
Correct.
Now, there's a chance that it increases, right? What do you do? Let's say, for example, you say, okay, this is a good company. Like you talked about DV and you talked about Hero Honda. You started buying it, and then it is going up. I mean, luckily, let's say, for example, like, no, it is going up. Do you continue to buy at a higher price, or you just say, okay, this is enough, or what's the price that you say, okay, this is the cutoff?
Okay, so the cutoff comes at 10% of my portfolio levels, and that's the
Hmm.
investment amount, not the portfolio level amount. So, if, for example, if I'm investing 10 lakhs as a portfolio size, and I'm in that particular company I'll be investing 1 lakh rupee. So that becomes my
Hmm.
cutoff limit. But when I
Hmm.
start
Hmm.
investing, Joseph, I'll only start with 40,000 or a 50,000
Hmm.
rupees, not more than that.
Hmm.
Then I'll
Hmm.
wait it out for 1 month or two. Then I'll see if how it's performing. If it's going
Hmm.
down, what is the reason behind it? And the
Hmm.
reason is like just the market has crashed and no other reason behind it. I'll put in more. If the price is going up, I need to know why it's going up. If it's
Hmm.
performing, the quarterly results are good, the future prospects look bright, I'll start keep buying more. Right? But when I said earlier also, I always keep a track of price to 200 DMA.
Hmm.
So if it's a great company and for some external reasons the price has fallen behind 200 DMA, I'll simply go ahead and buy. Just for
Hmm.
example, Bajaj Finance, right? Currently, I was just looking at the numbers because quarterly numbers are fantastic, right? 27% growth. But
Hmm.
analyst says the growth should have been 35%.
Hmm.
Because analysts were expecting, market expectation was 35%. The quarterly number came at 27%. So is 27% bad? No, not at all. But the price has fallen 10%. Because it has fallen 10%, it has went below 200 DMA.
Hmm.
And if I'm already invested in that scenario, Joseph, I'll definitely go ahead and buy it. But for that, I
Wonderful.
really need to know why the price has fallen.
Yes.
If I don't know that, then it's better that I stay away and stay out of it.
Wonderful. This has been very, very educative, Rahul. You have been very generous. As always, I've seen this in your WhatsApp groups and in our discussions and personal discussions. You have always been very generous to share your information and your knowledge. Thank you so much. Last question, Rahul. Where can people find you online? How can they connect with you to learn more from you?
Okay, I'm available on most of the platforms, but you can check my videos on YouTube. It would be with the
Okay.
name of Rahul Chauhan Biz Biz Rahul Chauhan Biz. So you can catch me hold there, and I'm available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, everywhere.
It has been a pleasure talking to you, Rahul. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I remember that when we met in Chandigarh, also that conversation was also fantastic. So I really love to have word with you. Thank you so much for your time.
I hope you enjoyed our conversations. Please share what you liked in our conversation and tag us in the social media. Thank you. Have a life of wins.